Welcome to episode 45 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show of the 90s ever made, Frontline, and other D-Generation comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining us on this podcast today is Alison, Daniel, and Kim.
Hey. Hello.
And we have a very special guest reviewer, writer, TV personality, oh God, what are they doing on here then, and purveyor of fine humour, David M. Green.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Love the show.
You're our first special guest for the Frontline series that we're reviewing. So
awesome.
Feel honoured.
and we've really given you a rib tickler of an episode. This episode.
Quite
really funny material this time.
Yeah, some dark themes. Absolutely. I think they might have struggled to make that a couple of years later.
Definitely.
So we'll get into your background, David. So this is where you brag about yourself. So you have every full right to talk about yourself as much as you want.
Okay. Well, yeah, what do you want to know?
Okay, well, first of all,
shoe size?
US or UK?
Australian.
I think we use the US version, which I'm 11, but 10 in UK. That's the thing about being Australian. You know, in the UK, everything's UK size. In the US, everything's US size. And in England, mustard is English mustard. Obviously, you don't need to say it's English mustard. But in Australia, you need to specify whether you're talking about the American version or the British version, or in rare exceptions, the Australian version.
And you obviously need your size 10, 11 shoes to, sorry, this is a horrible segue, to do your other projects, such as a VHS review, which is, can you actually explain what VHS review is all about? Yes,
it's a web series that I started for fun, and now I'm doing it because I don't have any other work. And it's the concept is I go through old VHS tapes that people have used to record TV broadcasts in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and then I cut together the funniest stuff that's on it, which is inevitably in the commercial breaks, weird ads, stuff that maybe it wasn't funny at the time, but through the passage of time, that it's become funny, or it's something that you can't do anymore, you can't get away with, or a product or business that no longer exists. And so it's like sort of preserving that kind of Australian pop culture, and also making fun of it.
See, I always wondered what I was going to do with these old Seinfeld tapes I have with ads on them from the early 90s. And now I know I can send them on to you for digitization.
What city were they recorded in?
Sydney.
Okay, no, that could be good.
Yeah, there could be some good ones. I can send them on over if you want, or I can digitize them and put them online, and you can see if you like anything.
Oh, sure. I'd love to check them out, because probably half of the episodes are from Adelaide, because they're either my tapes, because I grew up there, stuff that I recorded myself, or stuff that relatives or friends had recorded. There are a few episodes from Melbourne broadcasts, and this new batch of episodes that I'm releasing at the moment, there are some Sydney ones from the 80s that I got from Dan Illick. Dan Illick said to me, hey, I got this drawer full of VHS tapes, and it's like, those drawers that are like sort of wood panelled, and it's got the slots for whole VHS tapes.
Oh, wow.
Full one of those, filled with 80s broadcasts from Sydney television, full of old ads and stuff, and I just salivating at the thought of that, and I said, yeah, I'll take them. And I've only gone through a few of them, but yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's great, which that's some future episodes of VHS review there. So it's mostly Adelaide, little of Melbourne, little of Sydney. There's a couple of regional broadcasts, but yeah, I'd love to get some like stuff from Queensland and Tasmania and Western Australia. stuff that I haven't seen before. Maybe some international stuff going forward.
Other than being a Adelaide Channel 31 personality, you also had been writing for one of your idols, your comedy idols.
Yes, for the last 8 years, I wrote for Mad as Hell on ABC TV. And yeah, Sean McAuliffe was like my kind of comedy hero. Probably the way you guys feel about The Late Show, I felt about the McAuliffe program. Because I get I'm 20, I'm 35. I get the feeling maybe you guys are a couple of years older than me. So you were a little older when The Late Show was on. I was too young to watch it. So I only know of the show through the best bits. I rented the videos and then got the DVDs growing up. But like, yeah, for me, it was always the McAuliffe program, and Full Frontal as well, which, Sean McAuliffe and Eric Bana were kind of the standouts there. So loved that kind of sketch comedy. And, if I could have done, if you asked me if you could do anything when I was a kid, what do you want to do? And it was like work on a sketch comedy show. So yeah, very lucky that was actually able to do that and work with Sean, and it's all downhill from now. So,
well, look, at least you have scored a souvenir out of that. I do notice on your YouTube channel you've got a short video showing that you are now the custodian of the pink neon McAuliffe Tonight sign.
I'm jealous.
Yep, it's in my garage. Can you believe nobody else wanted it? They offered it to Acme, and Acme did not want it.
Wow.
Fair enough, because it is massive. It's like the size of a pool table. And when I heard at the wrap party that they didn't know what to do with it, I said, I will take it. I want it. Don't throw it out. So they delivered it to my house in a massive truck. It's just in the garage, and I don't quite know what I'm going to do with it. We're thinking of turning the garage into an office, and I guess I'll try and get it on the wall. But yeah, I've taken it out once to make that little video, and then I put it back. It's got this huge custom road case.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's safe at least.
David, I'm curious. Did you write any particular sketches or characters for Mad as Hell, or did you write anything?
I mainly wrote desk pieces. So Sean at the desk with a little picture next to his head, which we call the stills box, and yeah, he might refer to an article or a clip from the news or something, and the joke after. That was mainly what I did. Occasionally, I would get something else on, I wrote a fake ad for Bunnings, which was good, and those we used to call them coming ups, but we later started calling him 3 joke, or TJ for 3 joke. It was when he'd say at the end of the show, and not coming up because we've run out of time, and they usually do three of them. There'd be a clip that was usually visually interesting, and then the voiceover, saying something that takes it out of context. We wrote tons of those, and I think I only got a couple of them on. A few interviews over the years, but yeah, really, it was a big deal if you got a character. If you wrote a fake name of a character and got that on, that was a pretty big achievement. Because it was like probably 80% of the show was written by Sean and Gary McCaffrey, the head writer. So that remaining 20% was up for grabs for all the casual writers. There were about five of us at any one time, and a couple of people came and went over the years. So if you got anything on, it was a big deal. And there were so many stages where it could get cut. You could write something and then it doesn't. That's it. You could write something, it gets approved, it gets into the approved folder, but then it doesn't get recorded because something's happened in the news that makes it irrelevant, or something, there's too much material that week, so they don't get around to it. You can make it to the recording, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't work, it doesn't get the right audience reaction, or it goes out of date after they've recorded it and they can't use it in the show. They might use it in a future week, or they might change it. But yeah, there's so many spots you can just be devastated that your material doesn't make it on. So it was always a big deal if it actually made it to air.
So did you still get paid for the bits? Did they just employ you for a certain amount of time to write the sketches, and then, or is it just if you get it on?
Very, very luckily, it was a flat day rate. So if you got nothing on at all, you still got paid the same. Although if you did too many of those days, you would start to panic, because I think if you did a whole season of that, you probably wouldn't get invited back the next year. But I think that's a better way of doing it than how they used to do it on Full Frontal and Fast Forward, which was you got paid by the minute of material you got on air. So you might get paid for 1 minute anyway. Anything above that, if you got 2 minutes of material on the show, you get paid for 2 minutes. That was bad because, you could write a lot of stuff, and if it didn't get on, you didn't get paid. And also it would encourage the writers to not collaborate, because if you wrote with somebody else, then you'd have to split the money because it's two names on the script. And also it would encourage the writers to write these really lengthy sketches just to kind of eat up the time. That was what Sean experienced on Full Frontal. And so he made the decision that, no, we're not going to do it like that for his shows. It was just a flat day rate. So it worked well for the writers. And I think it made the show better, because he took that pressure off. Well, that immediate pressure off. There was still pressure, but it was a different kind of pressure.
It's certainly a huge loss to Australian television, Mad as Hell going. I mean, you look at what the Australian comedy that's on now, and it's just unwatchable, quite a lot of it. And yeah, I think I'm going to be missing Mad as Hell for many years to come. So I'm very sad that it's gone.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you very much for filling us in with that information, David. That's really, really cool. And I am not worthy. And I have a tweet, and it's a pedantry tweet. And it's from a listener. It is AB at East 13 Melbourne, where they're referring to not us, but an episode that we had covered. And it's more or less calling out the writers of Frontline. AB's has said, back chat and pedantry. Nikki Burke is introduced as 19 years old. Later, Brian and Jan talk about her having been to the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh, which is 86, and Auckland, 1990. I say that makes her 12 years old in Edinburgh, so it's a child prodigy story for Marty.
Oh, yes. I really hadn't thought about that.
That's a good pedantry.
Yeah.
Normally we go over all of this stuff in forensic detail, but yeah, that just completely slipped us by.
So credit to you, East 13 Melbourne, on Twitter.
Good spot.
David, I believe you actually have something. You've brought something to the party.
Oh, is this the clip that I asked you to get?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a smooth segue there. Yes, I thought, this is a late show related story, and I know you're talking about Frontline, but, you talked a little bit about late show in some of the earlier episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, it's a good spot to share this anecdote that I've told nobody. So this is an exclusive. So one of my other jobs is, when I'm not writing comedy, is I'm a radio panel operator for a sports radio station. And I've been doing that since 2012. And when I first started, I used to work with Rex Hunt. He was one of the commentators for AFL football. And he's has a great sense of humour, Rex, and I really liked working with him. He loved to do sound effects and that sort of thing. Occasionally, they would do what's called a TV game, where the commentators don't actually go to the ground where the game's taking place. They actually they stay in the radio studio and they call the game off the TV. And so most of the time I wasn't in the same room as Rex, but every now and then I'd see him when they did a TV game. There was one time he was there at the station, and after the game finished, we were just hanging out, and there was who else was there? I think Sandy Roberts was there as well. He was the other caller for that game, and a couple of tech guys, and we were just hanging out, and there was a laptop there with YouTube on it. And what inevitably happens when you're in that situation is you just start showing each other clips. And I think Rex was showing us some stuff from. So this was about 10 years ago, and he was showing us some clips from about 10 years before that of him like yelling at someone who was smoking at the MCG. And after that clip finished, one of the recommended videos that came up on YouTube was his appearance on The Late Show when he was singing T-Rex. And he's like, oh, put that on, let's watch that. And he's actually a pretty good singer. So I brought a clip. There's one particular bit that made us all crack up laughing, and we'll just have a listen to this, and then I'll explain it afterwards.
You spin like a car, you got a hubcap, diamond star halo. You're built like a car, oh yeah, a Nissan Patrol. You're a mountain youth, that's the truth, with your cloak full of eagles. Not West Coast, you're dirty sweet, you're my gal.
Yeah, so when Rex says Nissan Patrol, he just cracks up laughing, and he says, "Can you believe that? It's the ABC." Which, you know, you're not allowed to mention brand names on the ABC. And I said, did you get approval for that? And he said, no, but it's live. What are they going to
do? Who says you can't advertise on the ABC,
as long as it's live and you don't tell anyone. I guess they never invited him back. So, yeah. But, yeah, Nissan Patrol was his actual sponsor on his fishing show. And I think he still drives one to this day. So they got their money's worth.
That's fantastic. Did he ever share stories about being born and spawned in Bay 13? Selling Dixie ice creams?
I never heard. I've heard that rant. Yeah. I think I heard it on Get This. I didn't actually know Rex was a footballer or broadcast football before I moved to Melbourne. I only knew him as the fishing guy, and from that clip from The Late Show, and these ads for DV Milk, which was a brand of milk that was available in South Australia in the mid-90s.
DV standing for Dairy Vale and nothing else nowadays.
Yes, probably wouldn't pick those letters now. But I like him. He's a nice guy and a great sense of humour. He brushes some people up the wrong way, I know, but he used to say, when we're working together, he'd say, remember, we work as a team and we do it my way. So that's, as long as you knew that you did it Rex's way when Rex was there, you didn't have a problem.
And Alison, you've got something as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the only person who spotted this, but there's a new Netflix series starring Celeste Barber, who you might know from Instagram and various other things, which launched this week, called Wellmania. And the basic story is that she's a journalist who's been working in New York, and she comes back to Australia and is forced to stay in Sydney and live with her mum. And her mum is actually played by Genevieve Mui, who, of course, is Jan in Frontline. So I was like, oh, wow, there's Jan.
Did you go with your English accent? Can you do it? You're
no,
feeling better?
I'm not doing Jan again because I'm not very good at it, really.
I'm putting you under pressure.
You've only lived in England for 20 odd years.
23.
Considering I don't know what Genevieve's regular accent is she doing an English accent in Wellmania, or is it something else?
No, I think, I've never met her, so I don't know this for sure, but I think she's probably just doing her normal voice. There are bits of it and you can see where Jan came from, but basically she just exaggerated her voice and made it sound a bit sort of British or, dramatic, I suppose, when she was playing Jan.
Right.
She does play the mayor's wife in The Dish. Don't forget.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Why am I forgetting that? I should know all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a big part, to be fair.
No.
Oh, Jesus!
And it's Daniel Genie's program guide.
Always makes me laugh, that clip.
All right, so in this week's edition of the Green Guide, it's the first one to be published with G-codes. Perhaps tying this a bit into VHS review. Do you remember what G-codes were, David?
I know of them. I never used them. You discussed this last week, didn't you?
Might have been last week or the week before. So yeah, basically it's a way of being able to program your VCR for recording a lot easier. It's built into some VCRs. Otherwise, you can pay money for a palm-sized device that you sit on top of the video, and it basically acts a bit like a remote control. Basically turning on the VCR, sending it to whatever channel you have it set as, and essentially, pressing record for you, and then, 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever the time slot is later, pressing stop and shutting it down.
Did it work with barcodes?
No, that was the Panasonic barcodes that were around a few years prior. So they're different to the G code. So I found an ad in an old copy of Who Weekly from 1994, which I put on my Twitter a few weeks ago. But it's basically introducing the whole concept of G code. It says if you can dial a phone, you can now program a video. It says, no, really, the new G code instant video programmer is so simple, even an adult can use it. Look in your television guide and you'll now find a special G code number after every show's listing. To tape your favorite program, simply look up its number and punch it into your G code instant video programmer, which basically looks like a kind of a little, just a calculator. That's it. G code does the rest, and the programmer works with virtually all remote control VCRs, stores up to 12 programs at once, and requires no installation. You'll find G code wherever VCRs are sold. Call 131124 for more information.
You know what the really cool thing, the best way to describe G codes to the, I guess, millennials or whatever gen it is now, think QR codes. And you just get your remote, pointed at the QR code, bam, done. It's that type of concept.
Well, see, there's an example in the explanatory article explaining what G codes are. Even for the more technically literate consumer, the G code programmer has advantages. For a start, using the G code is quicker and more reliable with fewer commands needed. Power blackouts will also have less impact. For example, where you have programmed the VCR to tape an important program, but there is a brief mains power failure while you are out, or someone accidentally switches the VCR off then on again, unless the VCR clock and timer memory have power backup, the correct time and time of program may be lost. The G-code programmer, on the other hand, is battery operated and unaffected. Provided mains power is restored to the VCR before the scheduled program time, the G-code programmer will turn it on, switch it to the designated channel, record the program, and then switch it off.
That's such a specific set of circumstances in which it has an advantage.
Well, see, this is also supposing that, and you definitely could not say this about TV networks today, that everything's running to schedule, everything's running to time.
There's no buffer in this, is there?
Unless you wanted to record the 7 p.m. news on the ABC, which is always on it always starts exactly at 7 o'clock.
Even the 6 o'clock news services, I think they start bang on 5:59, I think, from memory. But the further you get these days, it's like even Mad as Hell was something like 8:37-ish was always the start time.
How you supposed to account for that?
Exactly. So, the other thing is that the G code wouldn't work these days anyway because everything's digital now. So it's this interesting sort of relic of the VHS era. So yeah, if you wanted to record the episode of Frontline we're going through this episode, you'd have to type in 419. And somehow, the way the codes worked, it was some sort of an algorithm which determined what the number is as to what channel and the time slot and all the rest of it. A bit of a weird, nerdy note there, sorry.
Were the codes universal or was it just for Australia? Would it work in any country?
I assume that they would work in any country. So, yeah, if there was something on a Channel 2 at 8 o'clock on Monday the 6th of June, then I suppose you'd have to... and it went for half an hour. No, sorry, 28 minutes, I should say. Then you could probably put in 419 as well. Yeah, I'm having a look at the listening here. If you wanted to record the 8:28 news update, that's 2600273 for those 2 minutes of airtime.
It'll take you 2 minutes to enter it.
You would be better off just standing in front of the telly and just pressing record and just making a cup of tea.
This is like that device that someone invented that makes juice, and it needs these pods to make juice.
And yes.
The idea was that you'd sell this, that you'd sell this big device thing, big expensive device, and then you'd get the little pods, but people worked out that you could just get the juice directly from the pods without using the device. So
Just by squeezing it in your hands.
Yeah, just by squeezing it with your hands. Like, I can just do this. I can just press record with my finger. You know?
Why can't you just go to the supermarket and buy some juice?
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't bother with the pod.
Yeah, just buy some juice for God's sake.
Now, also later on Monday night, it happens to be the 50th anniversary of the Normandy D-Day landings. Channel 7 had American coverage hosted by Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric. And Channel 9 also had a 1 hour special hosted by Tracy Curo. So, again, really fun stuff tonight. But there was also something else which caught my eye later on in the week. On ABC, in their Big Picture time slot on Thursday at 8:30, there is a 3-part series hosted by Jonathan Ross. Have a listen to this intro.
But what is an American? They like to think of themselves as being the contents of some great metaphorical melting pot. But I prefer to think of America as a delicious blended drink in which various cultures have been pureed together, each having left a solid bit of clumpy matter that stubbornly refuses to be sucked up the straw. And that's the drink we're serving this evening. So open wide and prepare yourself for the tasty treat we call Americana.
So this is Americana, the latest Jonathan Ross series, which, according to the Sydney Morning Herald Guide, the ABC has fast-tracked into its schedule after just 2 years shelf time.
Wow.
Fast track.
Wow.
But it's a fascinating 3-part series. The episodes are titled Fat, Dumb, and Rich.
I remember that. There was the first episode was basically about food, wasn't it? That's the fat
Yeah, that's
one,
the fat,
right?
yeah.
And then there was another one that had a lot of stuff about like pornography and sex workers and stuff, which I assume is dumb, is it? And Rich,
I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
yeah. Anyway, I very vague memory.
Be rich, wouldn't
Well,
it?
Well, these days
Wasn't there also like there was a guy who was like a millionaire or a billionaire or something, and he employed a lot of sort of young, sexy women to basically be servants around his house, which, you know, kind of, I guess the modern equivalent of that might be Andrew Tate with his various women hanging around his Romanian mansion.
Oh, wow.
I think that was on Americana. Anyway, it obviously showed the most tasteful and best bits of America.
Well, certainly in the debut episodes, you get to see Wassie basically doing, well, what is probably de rigueur these days, which is one of those big meal challenges. Trying to, eat a huge plate of, I think it was a hamburger and, like a big pound of hamburger. And, if you eat the whole thing within a set time limit, it's free. Spoiler alert, he doesn't last. If you are interested, if you do pop in Jonathan Ross Americana into YouTube, you can watch the series.
The intro there sounded a bit like Alan Partridge with the kind of metaphor about eating America.
Yeah, something kind of interesting that you can set your G code to.
What's the number there?
Oh, darn it, you've got me. Sorry,
I thought you were at your G spot.
I'm having to, because I'm reading it all off the scans off my phone. I'm having to switch from the guide to the SMH guide to the other green guide. Oh, damn it! It's not in here. It's in the next episode. It's in the next edition because it only goes up to Wednesday. Look, it doesn't matter.
I'm going to miss it then.
If
you know the G code,
tweet at
write
me
in.
and,
Yeah.
If you don't know the G code, that's a myth then.
I mean, the best I can do is that there's
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. If you can't find the G code, it's a myth.
Yeah, if you
okay.
can find the machine, tweet at me
God.
at Daniel G Online, and I'll tell you the number. Oh no, hang on! I found it here.
No, you haven't.
No, I have. It's 44064.
44064. I'll write that down.
It's just after The Damnation of Harvey McHugh, 29147, starring a very young Aaron Blabey. You might not know that name for his acting ability, but you might know him for his children's book writing ability. So stuff like Pig the Pug and The Bad Guys and Film with the Unicorn, I think, is the other one he's well known for.
Yeah, my daughter used to read those when she was small.
But there was another show on the ABC about this time called The Damnation of Harvey McHugh, a satirical series about a naive young public service clerk and a corrupt government minister.
Very odd series that. It's basically like, a televised play, stagey, and the set is really, really fake, sort of cartoony. It's very odd sort of program.
And also starred Philip Cross, Monica Morn, Ronald Falk, and Roger Oakley. Anyhow, we've gotten way off topic, so I think it's high time
Back to the G codes.
This.
We've got to find those G codes.
Can I just say, while we're still talking about G codes, my dad, one of our VCRs had like a remote that had a laser scanner on the edge of the remote that was supposed to be. I remember my dad saying, "Oh, that's for you scan a barcode and it records it." But I never saw it used and don't know how it worked. I don't know where these barcodes were.
Yeah, they were in TV Week. They were the Panasonic ones where you'd have the program guides every day, and then there'd be on the right-hand side, there'd just be a list of several key programs. There wouldn't be all of them. It would just be some selected ones, and you could scan that in and program it that way. But the G code was different to that, but similar. Same, but different.
I think the only other way to use that Panasonic barcode scanner was a very convoluted way. There were like generic barcodes in the manual from memory, so that there was one for the 1 to 31 days of the month. There was another one for January to December, and basically eventually if you scanned in enough barcodes you could put in it was probably easier to just do it manually.
I think the only use we got out of that remote with the scanner was I used to put it in my mouth and turn it on so that a laser would make the inside of my cheek glow red.
And coming soon, a spin-off podcast called The G-Spot, a discussion all about G-codes. Coming to your podcast.
It really is real. I promise you it's real.
See you there.
Cool.
All right, that's it for me. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much,
Are
Daniel.
we going to talk about the episode at some point?
Yeah, we are. We're running
Yes,
so
please.
over time right now. Sorry about this. David, I'm going to get you to do the introduction.
Yes.
This is where you get to do your very best Mike Moore impersonation.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to play the generic theme now. And then as soon as the theme stops, you say your Mike Moore impression. And
All
then
right.
you go straight into
Do
it.
I have
all right?
Do I have a small amount of time to fit it in?
You can take as long as you want. The quicker, the better.
All right.
I'll tell you when. So just listen out for the sustain.
Sure.
All right, here we go. It's coming up.
Hello, I'm David M. Green. This is Frontline Season 1, Episode 5, The Siege, broadcast Monday, June 6, 1994.
Hey! That's professional.
You're a legend, David. Thank you.
Please.
Cool. And this episode, the rundown of it being when a gunman with several hostages holds up a remote farmhouse, the race to get the best coverage is on. Frontline's questionable methods bring a storm of criticism, but they have their ratings and nobody got hurt. Surely all's well and ends well. But this one, I partial trigger warning, I guess, because it's based loosely on when they say loosely, it's nearly a parody of a real life situation that happened at the time of this recording of this episode of this podcast 30 years ago.
Yeah, it happened on the 30th of March 93.
Is this Waco? Is that what that was parodying?
No.
Waco was happening at the same time as this event, actually. The siege we're talking about here is the Kangai siege, which actually kind of happened in the middle of Waco, because Waco actually went on for about a month. But yeah, so there was this obviously big high-profile international siege, Waco, and then there was the Kangai siege, which was a huge story in Australia at exactly the same time.
So yeah, the whole basis behind this was that in real life that there was 3 guys who went on a 9-day killing rampage, across Queensland, New South Wales, and they ended up kidnapping 4 children and holding them hostage in a farmhouse in Kangai,
Right.
which is northern New South Wales. And the whole thing, what was extremely controversial was Mike Willisey, on A Current Affair, had tied up the phone line. So everything that happened in the episode of Frontline was harsh satire towards real life events.
But yeah, it seemed to be plausibly verbatim what happened with the Kangai siege. I say plausibly because, I mean, obviously, the writers weren't there, so who's to really know? But yeah, basically it starts with, the episode starts with Brian in his car using a car phone, which is a very 1994 thing, basically rallying the troops together because the siege is happening. Finally going that, all right, you better get Mike in as well.
Yeah, but Mike is AWOL, and so Marty and Stu, they're on time. So usually there's like in Frontline episodes, there's 2 or 3 story arcs going on at the same time, right? This one episode, it's one full story arc with a tiny little hint of a B story, but not too much on it, because with this, everyone is on the same case.
Although to be fair, like each reporter has their own sort of different take on it. So, Brooke is interviewing the gunman's mother. Marty, Stu, and Jace are close to the farmhouse where the siege is happening, and yeah, Mike is like Emma and Mike are doing that the interview with the gunman over the phone.
Did you notice that when Marty and Stu were going to the helicopter, and Stu was a bit hesitant on it, the pilot gave him the bottle of whiskey?
Yeah. Well, as long as the pilot didn't drink it, I guess that's okay.
I missed that. Good pickup.
Yeah, it's quite subtle, but it's there. The other thing we haven't mentioned is when they're trying to find Mike, they get his answering machine. Have you got the answering machine?
I'm not playing it because,
okay,
out of context, I believe it's not right.
Well, even if it's a as the script book says, a pathetic Joe Bjelke-Peterson impersonation.
I thought it was Tony Martin when I heard it.
I'm pretty sure it's Rob Sitch doing it, but
right.
It's a very, very poor Sir Joe impression.
Oh, hence the reason the pumpkin scones.
Speaking of which, like the only other person I can think of that did the Joe Bjelke-Peterson impersonation was Jerry Connolly.
Yeah.
Has anybody checked up on him in the last 6 months or so to make sure he's all right?
Oh, because of the Queen as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, I assume he's essentially pivoted from Queen to King impressions by now. I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good Charles by then.
He used to do a Prince Charles. Yeah, he used to do a Prince Charles. But also, Max Gillies did a Joe Bjelke-Peterson impression as well.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, I think anyone who could do voices kind of did Sir Joe, including kids in the playground when I was at school.
Career aspiration.
I think also it kind of says a bit of something about Mike that he's using that as his answering machine message. Like, I don't know whether Sir Joe was a thing still in 1994 or whether that may have been a deliberately dated reference. What do you reckon?
I think it's a deliberately dated reference, and
he's just so daggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 5 years out of date because he stepped down as Premier in like 1987, and the inquiry stuff was, I think that dragged on into the early 90s.
Fitzgerald inquiry.
But yeah, it would make sense that Mike still thinks that it's funny enough to put on his voicemail.
But with the episode, Marty is pissed off that the exclusion zone they have got going is 5 kilometres from the actual farm, and Mike Munro has the prime spot with footage of Mike Munro. Now, the thing is, though, with that snippet, do you think Mike was actually part of the episode, or would it have been taken as a sample from the actual
the script?
Real life
the script
siege?
Says that it's footage of him.
Actual footage.
It's file footage that they got from Channel 9 or somewhere.
And it's such a quick cutaway in the show anyway.
Yeah.
That you would think. There's no way that Mike himself would have done the actual cameo, as much as there are in the whole series.
Yeah,
actual people playing themselves. Next thing we see is Brooke arriving to interview the gunman's mother, and even that is pretty interesting in itself, especially what comes up in the script book, because it explains some of the stuff that's happening just in the actions.
Gavin, come on, love. Give yourself up. Let the kids go. Let them go.
Mrs. Forbes, do you have any 9-volt batteries?
I've got some right here. We were changing our smoke alarms, just coincidental. But yeah, you always have to have a backup, don't you?
Speaking of which, we are recording this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like just before that, Brooke is getting Mrs. Forbes to sign a release, and explaining that it's just an exclusivity clause. It's more to protect you than it is to protect us.
Yeah, because there are some unscrupulous people out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. She says the line, some other current affairs shows can be really unscrupulous. Yeah, unlike Frontline, of course.
But then some of the directions which come from the script book are really interesting. So, like, as soon as the paper is signed, it says that Brooke takes it from her and immediately snaps from caring into professional mode. And then later on, when Mrs. Forbes is doing her big sob piece, she indicates to crew, you better be getting this big, juicy, teary scene. So, like, it says so much more than just the looks do, really, that, like, this is the one shot and they absolutely blew it.
You'd think if they're making her sign that they would be paying her as well, right? Because, what's in it for her to not talk to any other networks?
Yeah, it does seem kind of weird, especially considering that, they're asking... what would you like to say to Gavin, through us?
Well, I guess it is kind of a breaking news thing, and there isn't time to really talk about formalities of paying someone when they really want to get it to air.
This wouldn't have happened if we had Harry and Miller.
The ticket seller. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Brian is trying to assemble a team to get good vantage points of the siege while dealing with his son turning up into the office, which provides a bit of a distraction. That's your B-side story arc.
It also seems to be one of the very few kind of real points of humour in this, is just seeing Damien, aptly named Damien, running amok.
Messing with the auto cue, that actually it's one of those old auto cues that takes real paper, whereas now it's all electronic, it's just a screen.
And he's got similarities to Mike when he plays his Game Boy and is interested in the computer games and the flashing lights, and just basically causing a distraction.
Yeah, messing with the camera zoom as well.
I got to say, the Game Boy reference is a nice throwback to episode 1, especially when Mike's gone, oh yeah, I know that game.
And he knows it's Mario, and that's what someone pointed out.
Super Mario Land.
It was the same game that he was playing.
He wasn't playing Super Mario Land this time. He was playing something else, Double Dragon or something.
Oh, that's right.
I think they say the name of it, or there's a reference to the name of the computer game. I didn't recognize. It's not one that I played when I was a kid, so I didn't remember it.
We need our pedantry listeners to find out what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear them now screaming at their phones or however they're listening. No, it's whatever game.
Well, I can shed a tiny bit of light again from the script book, because in the script, Domenica asks Damien whether he likes Mortal Kombat. Although, mind you, it's Mortal Kombat with a C in the script. But yeah, I know, like, I am no gamer whatsoever, but I definitely know that Mortal Kombat is with a K. But yeah, on screen it's Double Dragon. So if there is an actual Double Dragon video game and it's interesting, tell us what it's all about.
I don't know if you guys can hear the Grand Prix fireworks that are going off all around me, but extremely
I was wondering
loud.
if that was coming from here.
Yeah, I started hearing that. I think it's quite appropriate, actually, because there's a reference a bit later in the episode about what the 7:30 report are showing opposite Frontline, and it's should Melbourne have the Grand Prix, which I guess, well, Daniel, David, and I are all having flashbacks to all the heart-wrenching stories about Adelaide losing the Grand Prix in the 90s, and then Melbourne gaining it. So, bit of a rivalry between the two cities at that time about the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think it was November or December 93 that it was announced that it was going to move to Melbourne in 96.
Yeah,
So
95 was
this,
the last one.
This is a few months later. So it was already a done deal by the time this episode was airing.
Marty and Stu get aerial shots before the police chopper make them land, and that's the pure replication of Mike Monroe doing that, because that's what he did. So that's the parody of that. Then because of that, the police end up holding a conference.
We cannot stress the importance of media cooperation enough here. Already negotiations have been jeopardised by one media organisation breaking the air exclusion zone. Now, there are people whose lives are at risk here. Negotiations with the gunman have been halted as we are now unable to get through to him. It appears that he has left the phone off the hook. Now, I implore you once again to please observe the media restrictions we have in place. Now, that's all I've got to say at this stage. There'll be a further conference at 5 o'clock.
That echoes the real police conference when all that stuff was happening in real life too.
There is the difficulty in which our aircrew was placed by another helicopter in the area that was in a prohibited area.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That put lives at risk. They're the type of things that I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
Right.
it's pretty damn close to it. But I forgot to mention too that Emma got the gunman on the phone as well. So that's when Frontline had kind of hijacked the siege behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised that it was Emma who did this, because up until now, and for the most part of the whole Frontline series, it seems like Emma is always the one that has a conscience about what Frontline's doing and whether they're on the right side of what they're doing. But yeah, she finds the number and dials it, and manages to screw everybody else.
Yeah, and in true 90s fashion, she has to switch over to the landline in order to kind of get it recording, and she's got to hang up the mobile, and it's this whole procedure that you wouldn't actually get it today.
Did anyone notice with Marty and Stu what Stu was wearing?
Oh, no, I didn't notice.
Call yourselves Australian comedy fans. Go on. Look at his T-shirt very closely next time.
Tell us.
Oh, fine. Okay. He's wearing a Colin Carpenter T-shirt.
Ah.
A Colin Carpenter
like a proper,
T-shirt?
official Colin Carpenter when he had his spin-off.
I didn't even know they existed. Oh, from the sitcom Colin
with
Carpenter.
the
Carpenter.
the Superman-esque type logo on it. Look out, world! Here I come.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
No, see, I was looking for a different Colin throughout the episode.
Colin Conacher.
Yeah. So you get to see him really clearly at 9 minutes and 8 seconds into the episode. So yeah, this is Tom Gleisner sitting in the background fixing a photocopier. He's in almost every... Yeah, there is one.
Yep.
There
watch.
He's in the background of just about every episode, especially in the first season. I'm not sure if he's in the second or third seasons.
There's a nice bit of business actually with this Conacher where he takes out some long metal thing and he's got a brush and he's kind of holding it up and sort of brushing it like, you know, he's dug out a sort of ancient Roman pot and he's an archaeologist carefully brushing it or something. It's a wonderful bit of business going on in the background.
There's also a bit of audio I have of Tom Gleisner speaking to the ABC TV show about TV called, funnily enough, TV. He's speaking to James Valentine about his little cameo role here.
Now, Tom, VGen fans may be wondering why you yourself have such a low profile on Frontline. Were you tired of acting? Was there no role for you to do? What's the story?
Basically, acting roles in Frontline were handed out according to ability. Hence, I'm the photocopier maintenance man, and I do make regular appearances, but my back is the camera. But watch out for me.
I wish they could bring that back. TV. The only thing that got close to it is Media Watch.
Well, actually, there's a sort of a weird thing I haven't mentioned much about TV, to be honest. But very soon the show is going to be on a 1-month hiatus as production shifts from Melbourne to Sydney. In fact, it also gets a change of hosts. It was initially hosted by Simon Townsend, and with the shift to Sydney, it gets 2 co-hosts. Mark Mitchell and Tiffany Lamb.
When did James Valentine start doing it?
Not long after Simon Townsend did, I believe, because in one of the episodes, when Simon Townsend was hosting, James was on the panel.
Yeah, he was more like a TV reviewer on that show, really, rather than the host.
Now, Mike finally turns up to the studio after going missing, and he had spent the morning doing laps go-karts for a charity event. When he arrives, all hell is breaking loose.
You know, the guy has got a sign. We're proving it. We're proving it. The guy's got a sign. What's the name? Hang up on. Wait a second. I'm on camera. Don't hang up. Is this the one on camera? Hey, wait a second now. Go.
Well, just a few moments ago, I managed to make contact with the gunman himself, Gavin Forbes. Hello, Gavin. It's Mike Moore here from Frontline.
Hello.
Smooth as.
You missed out my favourite bit. Just before that particular moment, there's a guy, well, I don't know, someone dressed in a kind of furry bird costume, who's obviously from some kids show, and Brian sees this hilarious character coming through, goes, "You out!" like this, and then you get into all that chaos that you just get there.
Oh, yeah, because he would have been kicking him out of the studio because they're throwing live, trying to get this Frontline the interview recording.
They did use Studio 31 at ABC Elstonwick to make kids' programs. It was also where they shot the smallest room in the house, which was like a stand-up special show in the late 90s. It was called that because it was the smallest studio.
Huh.
In the building. Yeah. It's where they used to, there was two. There was Studio 31A and 31B. One of them they recorded the Melbourne News, and they did that until 1994 when they moved production to South Bank, which is where it currently is.
Right.
That's wicked. I love knowing the history of the TV studios, and you just go, obviously when you have walked in, when you've been doing your stuff, you go, there's rich history here, and I'm about to soil it.
Yeah, 33, so not 31. 31 was the big one. Yeah, 31, 32, the two big ones. It's where they made The Late Show and The Big Gig. And then, around the corner were the two little ones.
I can shed a bit of light on the name of that guy in the chicken costume, because he does turn up a bit later in the series. His name's Wacko the Chook. But yeah, it's just.
It's like
pluck a duck equivalent. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Except that he didn't speak except for honking a horn.
Well, that's kind of really what Pluck a Duck did.
But yeah, we'll see a fair bit of him later on in the series.
Sounds like Shirley's cousin.
But yeah, it's an amazing scene leading up to the actual phone interview, because like reading it on paper, it seems a lot more sedate than the maelstrom that's on screen.
Speaking of the phone call, here's the which one shall I play first, Mike Moore's or A Current Affair?
I reckon play Mike Moore first, and then let's see how it compares to the real thing.
Okay, all right. So here's Mike Moore talking to the kid on the phone.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, who's this?
Amy.
Hello, Amy. My name's Mike Moore. Do you know who I am?
No.
Oh, Amy, are you afraid?
No.
Have you enjoyed this adventure?
Yes.
Is Daddy there?
Guns. Yes.
And is he pointing the gun at you?
No.
You put Daddy back on the line, Amy. Thank you.
Now, here's the real-life Mike Willesee, A Current Affair chat.
When do you think that Leonard will let you go?
When the female police gets here.
You want to go?
Yes.
You want to get back to your mum and dad?
Yes.
Okay. Is your sister happy?
Yes.
What's her name, Trevor?
Tonya.
What is it?
Tonya.
Tonya. Could I talk to Tonya?
Okay. Hello.
Hello, Tonya. How are you?
Good.
I'm Mike Willesee, Tonya. Are you okay?
Yes.
That's more chilling, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that it was very controversial, and now I'm going to get a little bit more serious, but with all that stuff that was happening, other media reports and all that, like other radio, TV shows were trying to do the coverage of it too, getting the phone number and getting through. But
that's the kind of interesting thing about this, because there's also an episode of Media Watch on YouTube that dissects the Cangai siege as well. And it does reveal that, it wasn't just Mike Willisey speaking to the gunman on the phone. There were a couple of other
everyone
TV
in their
and
dog seemed
radio.
to have, didn't he say something like 11 media organisations or 11 programs talked to them on the phone? And you're thinking, well, no wonder the police couldn't get through. Every media organisation in the country is on it.
Yeah. And, well, here's one where Mike Willisey had a right of reply and actually got someone who decided to...
is this the psychologist?
This is the psychologist, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
disagrees with Mike, definitely, on this.
Among the most vocal critics today was child psychiatrist Brent Waters, who challenged us to let him state his case on air. I'm joined now by Professor Waters. Professor, you say you were appalled. Why?
Firstly, the impact, the fear that it will cause in many of the very large primary school aged audience that you've got at that time of night.
We're dealing with horror here. For example, a 14-year-old girl being stabbed and shot dead, and the viewers, including the children, hear that and see the remains of the body being removed. That's horror, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes.
How did we take that any further in terms of horror?
Well, firstly, you interviewed 2 young girls at a time when they didn't know that they were going to be rescued. The whole context of it was a typical situation.
But the children watching then knew those children were free. They weren't afraid for those children.
Oh, yes,
we gave them no more horror, and they knew the children were free.
Yeah. What children do, though, is they think, when will this happen to me? What's the danger in my neighbourhood?
Very disturbing, and that psychologist, spot on. Mike gets put in his place if you listen very carefully. Like, the psychologist is resisting, and just have a listen carefully.
There were radio reports that one child was dead and the other may be dead.
Yes.
And the question I put to that man was, can I speak to the children? I was concerned to see if they were alive, and if they were they safe?
Well, I mean, I guess you make a judgment about whether you want to be the news or whether you want to report on the news. In this instance, you are being the news.
I discovered those children were alive.
Yeah.
And I received a promise they'd be freed, and that happened 45 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
That professional resistance.
Me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you watch
real arrogance of it as well.
Yeah, if you watch the clip, which is on YouTube, then you'll see it's more of a visual context of, we're live on TV. You have just proven to me that it's all about you and not about the children.
There's a bit later in that episode, that interview with the psychologist. The psychologist basically says to him, the very fact that you have aired this conversation with the gunmen is going to inspire other people to take hostages or, do things like this, and then get in touch with media organizations. And that's obviously part of the plot of this episode of Frontline. That actually happens. But also it happened in real life. There was another siege, which is less well known, that happened in Brisbane towards the end of 93, I think it was, where I think it was a gunman held a bunch of people in a legal office, like a lawyer's office, overnight, and actually rang one of the current affairs shows to get on air and talk about it. I want to have my say. This is why I'm doing it. And so this is the thing. They're basically doing it for attention, really.
Yeah.
So the psychologist was bang on about that.
I was reminded a lot about this episode of Frontline when the Lint Cafe siege happened in 2014, because one of the things that the gunman tried to get hostages to do was to call, talkback stations and TV stations, and trying to get the gunman's point across. And it just sort of immediately brought this episode of Frontline to mind.
Was one of the reasons he chose that location was because it was opposite from the Channel 7 Sunrise Studios? Was that part of his thinking, I wonder?
Yeah, it could have been. It's right across there. That was right across there, the Martin Place area, wasn't it?
Yeah, like the Channel 7, they had to relocate. They had to leave the building, and their news for that day was like they used the control room from Brisbane and had the journalists, I think, maybe in Melbourne or something like that. So they ended up rerouting through their other studios in other cities in order to do the coverage. But I just don't imagine if a gunman called up, I don't think they'd put the phone call to air live on TV. And if it was on radio, I don't imagine they'd do it on radio either, but if they did, you'd have it on delay.
I mean, there was that example of, I think it was the Channel 10 show Alan Jones Live, where he would put callers to air live, and Alan Jones had been ranting about some government official. I can't remember the name of the official. Let's just say they were called Joe Bloggs. And then someone who identified themselves as Joe Bloggs rang up the show, and so they put Joe Bloggs live to air. And it turned out it wasn't the same Joe Bloggs. In fact, it was probably someone just pretending to be Joe Bloggs. And he said, "Oh, I hear you've been talking about me on the show, Alan." And it just became a farcical, ridiculous kind of thing. So I guess that has happened. But yeah, you would think that any current affairs program would not put anyone who was sort of, holding people hostage, essentially. You might put someone else live in the way that Talkback Radio does, but not someone in that situation.
Yeah, well, speaking from my own experience in radio, if you're interviewing a guest who you generally aren't in delay. But if it's talkback callers and you don't know who they are, you have to be in delay, and it's 10 seconds. At most radio stations now, it's not 7 seconds; it's 10 because it makes it easier to time out to the news and stuff.
Makes you wonder whether there was a delay or what it was on this Alan Jones Live program.
Yeah, well, there's no reason why they can't do it for TV. And then you just smash that dump button, and it just gets rid of the last 10 seconds and doesn't put it to air.
How often have you had to hit dump?
Me in
your day job.
In my career, I've probably done it 30 times. I've worked with some people who've never done it, and they're terrified that someday they might have to do it. But you do enough talkback segments, and you're having to do it almost always because they swear. I've never.
I assume it's more the F bombs and C bombs than anything legal.
Yeah, I don't think I'm across legal cases well enough to know whether I should dump something or not in that situation. But usually you can tell if someone's about to swear as well because they sound a bit drunk or they sound like an idiot. It's fun. It can be a lot of fun dumping someone. It's a rush. Forget drugs. Become a panel operator during late night talkback.
After the rundown of the phone call and Brian's son mucking around with the camera, Mike crosses to Marty, who's crouching down to make it look like he's dangerous in a dangerous area, and recapping what's going on, which is 5 kilometres away. But I just love how Mike says a particular word.
Well, Mike, the siege is now in its 12th hour. Still no sign of a breakthrough. Police have managed to make contact with the gunman, and trained negotiators are currently speaking with him.
Have any shots been fired?
Not at this stage, Mike. But police have warned us, the media here, of the very real dangers around. We believe he's heavily armed, and we're just confirming reports that Forbes is actually a former war veteran.
So we could have a Rambo situation.
Go, Michael. That's not out of the question.
Thanks for that, Martin. And Martin, keep safe.
Thanks, Mike.
I wrote that down as well. Did everyone else write that down?
It's very John Laws, isn't it? That intonation.
They mentioned John Laws in this episode.
Valvoline.
And it's just all speculation about. They don't really know anything. It's just
it's a Rambo thing. He's a military veteran.
Yeah, it's all these very nod, wink, wink. Kind
it's
of things
sensationalization,
about how he might be nuts. So we're not saying it outright, but we're just asking questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Praise around the office because another news show covers the recap of Frontline as well as the siege ending, and they kill it in the ratings, like absolutely destroy the rivals. But there is backlash now. The police are blaming Mike for holding up the phone and putting the kids in complete danger.
I've been in the game 15 years, and I've interviewed everyone from the Dalai Lama to Sharon Stone, and I think that counts for something.
Well, Mike, there's a lot of people who don't share your confidence in your own ability, and one of them is the Chief Commissioner, Mr. Frank Gray. He is on the line now. Mr. Gray, good morning.
Awkward.
Oh.
But I just love the fact that Dalai Lama to Sharon Stone.
Yeah,
to a siege.
That it's a specific range of people, isn't it? And, you know, I think people in a hostage situation are outside that range, shall we say.
And you probably don't want either of them to uncross their legs in front of you.
That as well.
Yeah, you don't want Dalai Lama to do that.
No, because he's wearing a robe, you know.
Apologies. Sorry for making it.
Does that even make sense? I don't.
I got it.
It's like a Scotsman in a kilt. What's underneath? Yeah. I mean, we've done G-spot jokes earlier, so you know, let's go.
Just don't make the at one with everything joke. If you remember that.
Yes, I've seen that.
So, but Mike chats to Brian about his doubts over the way that he handled everything on the phone, and Jan comes in and explains how everyone wants to interview Mike, including John Laws.
Never seen Jan so excited.
Yeah.
There's also in the script book, Jan mentions Ernie and Denise. I'd think about that one.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I like the bit when Jan's in and she's saying to Mike, which photo shall we use, darling? And there's basically one of Mike looking very serious at the desk. And there's another one with him kind of chillaxing with a guitar. And Mike's sort of finger goes towards the one with the guitar. And she goes, no, that one. And just sort of encourages him to go for the proper newsreadery type one.
Why even give him the option?
Yeah, I know.
To make him feel like he's making the decisions.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's because they wanted to put a joke in at that point, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
much needed because, there was, quite a lot of backlash to the real Kangai siege as well. I've got a clip here of the day after them talking about it again on TV, and you'll never guess who thought that the interview was a good thing.
You know, I can't believe the criticism today of television, the medium itself, for putting this material on air. I mean, it's the essence of good television journalism. I've been a journalist for 31 years, and I would have been proud to do an interview 1/10 as good as that. I think it was one of Michael Willis's finest moments.
But you're celebrating Michael Willis's journalism there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's only concerned with getting the good story. The only thing he wanted to do last night was make great television.
And he made it.
Yeah.
No, your support of this type of journalism really makes me angry. It's like everything's sacrificed to get the good story. The journalist becomes some kind of hero. What I'd like to know is who cleans up afterwards, you know, who takes responsibility for what happens afterwards.
Yeah, none other than the host himself, Simon Townsend, reckoned it was a good thing. Yeah. I would say probably, again, it doesn't seem like it's a good thing ultimately, but I'd say probably for that initial rush, I can understand why Simon thought that.
It's sensational, and you know, if you had it on, you would be gripped by that Willis interview. It is a really astounding piece of television, but when you step back from it, you realise what a bad thing it was.
When you actually think about it.
After Brooke and Stu managed to
gazump everybody again, basically with an exclusive interview. Do you reckon that would have been Harry and Miller again?
So every time, ticket seller. They get him on board with Frontline, and Jeff gives praise to Mike for all his efforts. You know, Jeff the weatherman.
Everybody's talking about you, mate. Really? Mate, I was in the canteen, bumped into Helen, and she said that, you know, Helen. Oh, Helen. Helen, yeah. And she said, thanks to Mike Moore, our rate card is up $1,000 a spot. $1,000! What's a rate card?
You know Helen.
You know Helen. Helen, the one with the shaking hand. I don't know what the shaking hand is meant to mean, but...
Write in if you know.
Yes. Is she related to Jenny, as in Jenny?
Oh, not microwave Jenny.
Yeah. After that, while Mike still has his doubts, the police commissioner gives Brian the third degree over interfering with the police work.
Mate, everyone was safe. It might not have ended like that. You know and I know that you risked that kid's life. Frank, you're getting a bit overdrawn. You took a fucking stupid risk. We knew that bloke was nuts. Nobody got hurt. Oh, but they could have. You endangered people's lives.
That echoes that whole Willisey going, hey, no one got hurt.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a great little sweary with the swear words muted out performance there.
That was really intense acting, like just delivery of each scene. So it was more of a drama than a comedy with this episode.
Yeah.
And while they still pander to Mike's ego, especially giving him a copy of Time magazine, Australian edition.
Australian time, yeah. But I think it's
which
funny.
Marty promptly tries to draw a moustache on, which is quite funny.
Yeah, I think it's funny that he just he doesn't look at the actual headline, has the media gone too far? It's just the fact that he's on time, Australian time.
Yeah, and they frame it, even though it's not really that good context.
Doesn't matter, it's just time.
Not exactly complimentary.
But Brooke celebrates after getting the exclusive interview with Gavin from the courthouse. And then sometime later, Brian tells Mike there's another siege happening and the gunman wants to talk to Mike exclusively. And, well, everyone knows the end. Yeah, the most awkward punchline ever.
Here comes the punchline.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, that's the whole point of this episode, really. That, nobody is endangered in these situations until they are.
Yeah. Until that megaphone that is live TV.
Yeah.
So would have there been a 10-second delay there?
You've got the whole of Australia watching and listening. What do you want? I want you to hear bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Cut to a shocked Mike Moore and then cut to credits.
Yeah. Just like the psychologist said would happen.
Exactly.
It did.
Yeah.
And it's such a great point they make. And it's not even a satirical point. It's just a point about, being sensible with the responsibility that you have as a media organization. And I watched that and it made me think of the Port Arthur massacre, which happened after this.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought, man, I don't think they would have been game to do that if they were making it in 1997, because the trauma would just be too fresh in people's minds.
God, you make a good point there.
Yeah.
It reminded me of during the Port Arthur situation, there was an ABC journalist who did manage to get Martin Bryan on the phone because she was calling around. She was calling locations around, and because he ended up in some cottage after the massacre, which he tried to burn down. Yeah, I actually found this account about it. So this is by Richard Lower, who was the ABC TV news editor for Tasmania at the time. And he wrote an article for the Asia Pacific Media Educator in 1999, which I guess is a journal. And it's called Port Arthur Massacre, a TV Editor's Experience. He says, there was another incident where a reporter spoke to Bryant, and until recently she was one of the very few people who had heard his voice. We had dispatched her on the Sunday afternoon, and she was innocently ringing around various locations around Port Arthur. She rang the Seascape Cottage, who should answer the phone but Bryant, and she got into conversation. It was only very brief, and he ended up hanging up on her. She returned to the office that evening really agitated, saying, I've spoken to him, you've got to do a story on him. We decided that we would not pursue that particular angle because we had half a dozen other stories involving witnesses. We were also very sensitive and wary because we remembered that time when the in brackets, the Channel 9 television network's a current affair host, Mike Willisey, had spoken to hostages in a helicopter siege. And the last thing we wanted to do was get involved with that type of reporting, where there were so many other angles of the story to cover. The 7:30 report picked up the story a few days later, but I often wonder whether I made the right decision. I don't know, but I would probably do the same thing again.
It's amazing how the one siege, it's like it sent ripples out to the rest of the media about the way it conducts itself. I mean, obviously, it had a lasting effect in the writers of Frontline, but also a lasting effect, on the news media as well.
In fact, I got a snippet here of Tom, this is from TV as well. Tom Gleisner talking to James Valentine.
A lot of TV tonight.
Yeah, in regards to this episode.
Tom, am I right that the Brisbane and the Kangi sieges were in some way the inspiration for the whole series?
Yes, that's pretty much a correct statement, James. We've been looking at all the excesses of the media over the last year or two, but if any one event brought them most clearly into focus, it was the behaviour of a certain current affairs program during those sieges.
What did you and the others find most disturbing about the actions of the journalists and their justifications afterwards?
Well, the behaviour spoke for itself. The fact that they tied up a phone line to a farmhouse and went in and spoke to a gunman who was at that stage holding a gun to, the heads of some kids. But it really was the glib justifications afterwards. Basically, it worked out fine. No one was hurt. So what did we do wrong? And that clearly wasn't the point. It might not have worked out like that.
So that sums up exactly what you just said, Daniel.
Yeah, and look, I know that this is probably not as hilarious an episode as of Frontline that we've compared to what we've had previously, but really this is the writers really making their point. Like it's probably summed up in a short review that was published in the Sydney Morning Herald Guide written by John Casimir. It goes like this. The current affairs industry has barely flinched over Frontline. In a sad indictment, the response from the bods at ACA in real life has generally been along the lines of, we were expecting something really nasty and this isn't too bad. Frontline's accusation has been, you're liars, cheats and unscrupulous manipulators. The response has pretty much been words to the effect of, yeah, so what? There hasn't been more than a glimmer of righteous anger from those being so savagely satirised. And it doesn't take the proverbial rocket scientist to read between those lines and get the message, the reality is much worse. This week's episode shifts up another gear on previous efforts, palpably meaner than before. The programme's intent has always been thinly veiled, but this week we're talking wafer thin. The entire program feels like it has been spat out in disgust. A quasi-fictional retake of last year's Kangai siege. It features a gunman at Weirpoina in Victoria who has taken his kids hostage and bailed up in a farmhouse. The police set a 5-kilometre media exclusion zone around the house. This is not good enough for Frontline, of course. They send the chopper up to get better shots of the house. And meanwhile, back at the office, Emma has tracked down the number of the farmhouse and has the gunman on the phone line, waiting for Mike Moore to arrive for an exclusive interview. If it all sounds familiar, that's because it should. There's even a fair amount of dialogue that might ring bells. The targets here are as big as the sides of barns, and the best program on TV demolishes them with zeal. So, yeah, not the funniest episode, but a hell of a lot to say.
It's got its moments.
Yeah, this is one of the episodes that I think a lot of HSC students would be very familiar with because it's one of the prescribed text. I was in Year 12 at the time this came out, so I was way too young to to have the ability to analyze it for my university entrance score. But I noticed quite a few people when it came onto Netflix or YouTube. People were looking at it thinking, they either loved it or hated it. They either had bad memories of all the work they had to do for school, or it was one of those ones that really changed them and got them to analyse and realise exactly how the media operated. I just noticed when I was looking into the reactions, and Mike Munro was in the helicopter at the time, and apparently there was not a no-fly zone, and so he said he was well vindicated by the police, who never said there was a no-fly zone. Police helicopter came at us like an angry hornet, and the police pilot was heavily criticised by a judge at trial, and he still had no regrets. But there is apparently a show, Crime Investigation Australia, last year, and there's an episode called The Kangai Siege, and it actually has people's reactions and thoughts about it. So that apparently is on 7+. So I might have to check that out and see what that's all about. But they interview the detectives and other people that were affected by the siege. So I think that'll be worth watching just to see what the real life story was about.
Yeah, there's numerous interviews with the kids I think, on some anniversary, who now are adults, of course. So there's plenty to explore about the Kangai Siege if you're interested.
That concludes Frontline Season 1, Episode 5, and the Champagne Comedy Podcast, Episode 45. Hooray! 45 episodes, and you're all still holding in. So, Phil, sorry, that's such a dark episode, what we just done. So, email...
thanks for sticking in with this, considering it feels like this has been one big downer.
Yeah. God, what an episode that I did to choose you to get this. Oh, come on, David. I promise if you want to come back, I'll put you on a more positive one.
Well, that's why you need me here. It's just raise the mood a little bit.
You are a purveyor of fine humour, mate.
Well, look, if you're looking to lift your spirits up, there's plenty of episodes of VHS Review.
Yes.
And yes, I should say they come out. They come out fortnightly for the next several months. So yeah, we've got lots in the can. So yeah.
Where can we find VHS Review?
Full episodes are on YouTube. If you prefer to watch things in a compromised aspect ratio with extra crap on the screen, I have a TikTok account as well, VHS Review. And that's REVUE. Yes, review with a U. I don't really like the name of it. I couldn't think of anything better, and now I'm stuck with it. So that's where I'm at.
Also, one personal question. Is Good Afternoon Adelaide coming back?
No plans. We were looking at maybe doing a podcast version of it, but then my wife and I had a baby, and it's just been a bit logistically difficult at the moment because all the other people involved in the show are in Adelaide, and I'm based in Melbourne, so I could only work on it when I went back to visit. But all the episodes of Good Afternoon Adelaide are on YouTube as well.
We need more Norman Vine in our lives.
Yeah, it's a nice escape for me.
Two of David's previous projects, Good Afternoon Adelaide, and also his previous game show 31 Questions, are available on CTV Plus. Which is a live and catch-up service for the 2 remaining community TV stations in Australia. Yes, community TV is still a thing, thank goodness. So, if you go to ctvplus.org.au, you can see those 2 series.
Also, one quick one, your suit, with 31 Question suit, do you still have the blazer?
With the question marks on it? Yes, I do. It's
fantastic.
In the cupboard. It still almost fits.
You need to put that in a museum.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't think Acme would be interested. They're not interested in the Michaela Tonight sign. I doubt they would want this.
One can only hope. All right. Well, as I said, this concludes the Champagne Comedy Podcast, episode 45. Feel free to email us at champagnelateshow@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter if it's still alive or whatever, at TLS Champagne. Website champagnecomedy.com, Facebook, the Late Show page, as well as search for Champagne Comedy Podcast group on Facebook. It's on private. Answer the 3 questions and you're in. If not, I'll just accept you anyway. And also Redbubble too, where we're trying to raise money for the podcast to pay for the subscriptions and stuff. bit.ly/Champagne Comedy. As always, thank you so much, Alison, Daniel, and Kim, for coming on. And also David M. Green, our major special guest. Thank you for coming on, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do love the show, and I really appreciate what you put together and all the research and time you put into it. It's a fantastic resource that'll hopefully last for many years and be very valuable for future generations. So well done.
Time to wrap it up, I think. Catch you next time. I'm Matt. See you later.
Bye.
Fired.
Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.
Have any shots been fired?